Welcome to DAPS Magic Live. I am Mr. DAPS, and I'm joined tonight by Murray, and we just finished the first season of Star Trek Picard, and we thought it'd be fun to do a brief recap slash, well, probably not as much of a recap as much as a reaction video slash review. And Murray, let's just start it off with this episode, and then we can jump out to the full season. And my first question for you is, what are you thinking slash feeling right now? I'm going to switch this to gallery view so they can see both of us, because that'll be cool, because I don't know, why not, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, what are you thinking and feeling right now?
Oh, man. I feel like my feelings are catching up with me. that I have been a huge fan of Next Generation for a long time. I did see like original episodes when I was a kid, but really it was Next Generation is what I really watched all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been excited that Picard came out. So to have this series kind of continue on, we probably should have said that there are spoilers.
Yeah, we should warn people that there's spoilers coming.
So I'm gonna give a little pause because
we're gonna stay PG, where the show did not with some of its. Like, I would say it was PG-13, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe a little more.
Maybe a little bit more
language
for language
ratings, but yeah.
Yeah.
But so Data was an integral part of this season. I felt like he really got the farewell that he deserved.
Oh, totally.
In this episode. And I guess this has more to do with the movies than really the series. But the movie had him sacrifice himself, and it was good. Like it worked. It was emotional. It felt like a good ending for the character. And then this, I think they really gave fans like us what we've always wanted to see with Data, is that
it was
like
a good goodbye he deserved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think and him able to say, this is who I am, this is what I wanted, this is it. Like, yeah, I really like that.
Well, and it really tied into, without going too deep into spoilers, it totally it connected with who he's always been. And I thought that was a really nice way to say goodbye. And I will really be interesting to see how this changes Star Trek lore slash history, because it will. Because really, the first time we said goodbye to Data, it was more of a shocking, like, the series is done, we're just done. And this time it felt a little bit more planned. And I thought that was a really solid thing. And they built to it in a way that was very natural throughout the whole season. And I thought that was a good call as well.
And I guess in a way... Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, no.
The problem with all video conference calls right now. But I think they also answered the whole thing of he's still going to continue on with Soju.
Yeah.
Like, there's a way that he can still go on
in a much more human way.
Yeah, I think so too. And I guess this alludes to another part of the episode too. But they made her even more human than Data. So it really is that next generation of him.
That's a good point.
So because I believe they've basically said her body is much more. It's sort of like half and half. So, yeah, there's like a biological component, but there's a synth component, and yeah.
It'll be really interesting to see where it goes next season, which I haven't a clue where that's going to be, because to talk about the whole season is they did a really nice job of creating a beginning, a middle, and an end, even though it didn't feel like it was ever going to get to that end part. It was like, how are they going to wrap all of this up? And we were talking even last week after watching the show that it didn't seem like there was any way that they could really complete this story in a way that would make sense. And we had things that we were guessing would happen, and some of them did happen, to our credit. But it really was kind of that, like, how the heck are you going to wrap all of this many question marks up in one hour show, basically? And they actually did it, and they did it better than I think we ever imagined that they could. And they did it in a way that was not forced in any way. It felt very natural. And even though I think one of our big predictions ended up happening, it didn't have us sitting there like, oh, here we go. Like, it kind of did, but it didn't have us going, oh, I told you so. It was more of like, oh, that was really good. And in fact, I think one of us said that when it happened, was like, oh, that was really good, or they did a good job, or something like that. Mm-hmm. And that was, I think, really a credit to the writers and the whole season of this writing, which, let's just talk about the whole season right now, is we've had 10 episodes now, and I would say for, what do you think, half of it, we haven't had any clue what was going on?
More than half, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like you pointed out, like approaching the season finale episode, there were things that we still had questions about. That were like, how is this going to end? What does this really mean?
Right.
That kind of thing. I think that's a huge testament to the show, that this is one of the only shows that it's very much like, I have no idea what is going to happen.
Right.
Throughout this whole series. But it wasn't like there weren't answers along the way. It was still very well done, that you could keep up with it. You could speculate like we did. You had things uncovered as it went on, but yeah, they just had such an intricate mystery with everything. So
yeah.
It was well done. Yeah.
And it was interesting too, because as we went through the season, there were lots of things that seemed like they really didn't matter, maybe, or they didn't make sense. And one of the great things I think they did this season is everything was tied together and was connected and was cohesive, even when it didn't seem like it was. Mm-hmm. Even going back to 2 weeks ago's episode, where it's like, oh, this is a nice reset, and this is a good connection point. Little did we know at how important 2 weeks ago that episode was going to be with this episode.
Mm-hmm.
From, like, even going back to, there were elements of Riker and Troy talking about their lost son that really in some ways connected with tonight's episode. And it really was, everything was a setup leading to tonight, or this week's episode, which I think was an absolutely fantastic thing. The big question mark there's a couple big question marks in my head, is one of the things they didn't necessarily wrap up was the Borg story. Mm-hmm. And so there was definitely the Borg were a huge part of this, and they were a driver for a connection between the Romulans and the Federation, I think. They were kind of that, like, this is a place where we kind of work together, even though we're not working together anywhere else. And in some ways, they're still very much enemies, but they tolerate each other. And so there was this huge, like, Borg cube that really played a huge part in most of the episode, that I would say in the last episode really kind of just got left there. And even from the last, 30 seconds to a minute of the episode, that became an even bigger question mark for me, because of who ended up going with Picard. And I'm not going to say all the spoilers, but when you think about it, who did go with Picard and who didn't, and what's going to happen with the people that didn't versus who did. And so it'll be interesting, because it left a big question mark for me with the Borg. I think it left the door open for future storylines with Romulans, I think, and they did a really nice job of filling in Romulan lore, much in a way that the original series and then the movies with the original series filled in a lot of Vulcan lore. I feel like this series really has started to dig into the history and the mythology of the Romulans, which I think is fantastic. I mean, it's very much like the Next Generation did with Klingons, and then the DS9 did that with the Bajorans and some of the other species. But it really was cool to see them dig in. But as I'm thinking more about it, because they did wrap up this storyline in a very nice bow, I am finding myself with more question marks, and part of it's just like, where does Picard go now? Like,
right.
in many ways, this series of 10 episodes was the perfect, it's not a mini series, but it was the perfect series of a Picard story that stood alone. And you really don't need any more, as much as I think both of us would agree we want more.
Yeah.
But it ended the story so beautifully that it's just like, okay, we're done. That was good. And I mean, it's kind of like watching, if it's kind of like watching episodes 1 through 6 of the Star Trek movies, and at the end of episode or series, the 6th movie, you're kind of like, okay, that was good. They told the story, like it finished that that group of characters' story. Even though there was the bumpy parts in the middle, and I don't think there were any bumpy parts really in this series, but it really like I think it was one of the best written Star Trek series I've ever seen. Would you agree?
Oh, I would definitely agree. Yeah, I think again back to just how much they kept us guessing on things and kept things moving, and it like I mean, I think there's parts within the episodes that kind of lag, but there's no episode itself that actually like brought it down. Where I think a lot of times, even in shortened seasons, there's always like an episode.
That one episode that was no point. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Everything had connection with each other and fit in very nicely. Yeah, it is interesting how you're saying it. Like the end was not what I was expecting because of also Star Trek Discovery, which they've had these 2 seasons now already, and they always end on cliffhangers in some way, or at least alluding to what's going to come up in the next season. Yeah, we really don't know what's going to happen in next season, which kind of fits with the way Next Generation was. Like you really just had this like end of the season for the most part, and that was it.
Except for season 3, right?
Yeah. I think there's maybe one other one that.
Yeah, there's a couple times where they leave you on cliffhangers, but
yeah.
The big one was season 3.
Yeah. So for the most part, yeah, we had. I feel like that was more Star Trek. Like it was the end of the season. That was it, and you would look forward to the next season, which I think we're doing. But there was really no clue as to what would come up for next season.
Yeah.
For the most part. So yeah, I like that the sky's the limit, space is the limit for this next season. Yeah.
It'll be interesting too because I feel like a lot of this season was a season of discovery for each of the characters. Not just Soji, who was kind of the main, I guess, protagonist of the show beyond Picard, but you've got Rafi, you've got all of these other characters that become kind of their ragtag crew, and each of these characters are trying to figure out like who they are, who they're going to be, what are their motivations, what are they willing to put their hearts and lives on the line for. And by the end of this season, it's all there. Like they've answered pretty much all of those questions. Like there's one person we don't know if it's going to end up in jail or not next season, which I feel like they might need to address in the next season. But you know what? If they end up with Discovery in the future, who knows? Like I don't know. I could see it happening, and then it won't matter. But it was interesting, I guess. Who was your favorite? Like even Jean-Luc had a rediscovery of who is Admiral Picard now, and what are his values and what's important to him. And really, it was about living and not just waiting to die. And so I guess my question for you is, what was your favorite character development story that we saw over the last 10 weeks, I guess?
I mean, if it's okay to say it's 2 people, because I think it's about the relationship. I think it's Picard and Elnor.
Oh, okay.
I really liked because throughout Next Generation, there was this common thing that Picard didn't want kids, and he didn't really like kids. But there's always sort of like a soft heart that he'd have towards kids.
Yeah.
In a lot of episodes. So now, fast forward to Picard. Here's this Romulan boy that he at first kind of befriends, but then he really mentors, and then there was this relationship that formed, and even after they kind of allude to, even after a lot happened with the relocation of the Romulans and up to that point. And so,
which is a good place to plug the book.
Yes. Oh yeah, the book I'm forgetting the name, but the book that came out that's a prequel.
Picard: The Last Best Hope. I'll pull it out while you keep talking.
Yeah. That I think that is I went through it on audiobook. Usually it takes me a little while to go through any audiobook. I think I got through it in like 3 days. Like I think it's a great book.
Yeah. And I read it on a flight to Texas and back, and I was done super fast. Great book.
Yeah. So that really lays out a lot of the other characters' backstory too. But I mean, I think the season did a good job also. Like I think because I think we both knew, okay, this is kind of what they're setting up with Elnor and Picard.
Yeah.
And actually to see it unfold in the show took it like a step further and really made it more solid and real.
And they made some good choices with that relationship by separating them and having Elnor forced into relationships with other people. Mm-hmm. And because he could have ended up in that really kind of like sidekick protector role where he didn't have a lot of interest. And I think because they made some of the choices they did of splitting them up, it made for a better... it made for a more rewarding ending to the season for the two of them, I think.
Yeah.
And it also created more heart in many respects.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would have to go for growth. I really like Soji's growth, mainly because it seemed so realistic. Like Elnor and Picard were realistic as well, but Soji's growth really had... you could see the struggle with it. You could see the connections to Data in it, like that conversation in the galley where they're talking, her and Picard. And I really liked I think where you liked the connection between Elnor and Picard, I like the connection between Picard and Soji, mainly because it is kind of that new Data connection. It's that, like, she kind of is the new Data, except for she's the Data that Data wishes he could have been, and never was. Right. Like, he never really reached that level, even in death. And he only analyzed it and could put numbers together, where she can really feel things and have those emotions. And so it was really an interesting thing to watch, really, the two of them develop, because it actually is putting him in that paternal role as well. Mm-hmm. And seeing the bond that grew, and just the individual personalities that grew as well throughout the course of those 10 episodes. And then really it's because of those, that's where the series ends, or the season ends where it did, is because of that relationship that grew through the whole time. And really it comes down to, even though they grew as people, it really was because of who they were at their core, and that maybe never changed, which I think was kind of cool. Because when you think of like Soji's actions throughout the entire season, for the most part, they're very consistent of her being that helping person, like wanting to make things better, wanting to help people, having a heart for people, and obviously she goes through ups and downs. And then Picard, at the end of the day, and will always be, he's that guy who always wants to save the galaxy, always wants to care for people, really stinks at expressing it, right up through the whole season. Like, they really nailed the fact that he's not good at communicating how he feels about people. And I thought that was a really smart choice, because it acknowledged the big elephant in the room, that he always has kind of been that very big, tough guy, that's that stalwart kind of a guy, that maybe didn't get as soft, and still had feelings, just couldn't express them. And I think that was a good thing to explore with this season. Another thing that was really cool in this series or season is they had a lot of the Next Generation cast or crew return. And so I guess my question now is, who was your favorite Next Generation character that appeared in season 1 of Star Trek Picard?
I think, and I guess too, there was a few, maybe just one, not Next Generation, but a former Star Trek character as well. Not my favorite, but just to mention, 709 is in a couple episodes. So,
I'm gonna count her as like any. Let's just say any Star Trek
any
former
Star Trek,
cast
yeah.
member. That's a better choice. Yes.
I think my favorite is Riker.
Yeah.
I think I personally I've always liked Data a lot. I think he's been possibly my favorite character out of Next Generation.
Mm-hmm.
But it was great having Riker. I think to see, I think ever since Nemesis and maybe even the last couple of movies, like I kept wanting to see what happened to Riker and Troy. But
yeah,
just thinking like, okay, Riker has this career that he could really take off with, and I want to see what happened. We kind of got that answer with all of this. So
well, and I think just to double up on that is we finally got to see Captain Riker and not just Commander Riker or First Officer Riker. Mm-hmm. And it was really cool to see Captain Riker in command.
Yep.
And see what
a whole fleet. Yeah.
It kind of reminded me a little bit of Pike. Like, he had that confidence, but he wasn't also cocky about it. It was just like, I know I'm in a good place. Don't mess with me. It was very much the poker games we would see in the Next Generation, now that I'm thinking about it. But there was a maturity to it that he didn't necessarily have in the Next Generation or in the movies, where he still was kind of that number one. And suddenly in Picard, we saw Captain Riker as the captain, and there was no doubt about it that he was the captain and you weren't going to mess with the captain. And that was a really cool thing to see, I think, that we've never gotten to see before.
I think he even took on traits or more like captain traits from Picard. Like I could see a lot of that because Picard always stood his ground. He always had that kind of confidence that was just, hey, I know what I'm doing. I know what's at stake, but I've got this.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't do it like you're saying in a cocky way. I feel like Riker really took that on. Even said, hey, I learned from the best kind of thing.
Yeah.
But he did it in a Riker way, which I gotta hand it to Jonathan Frakes. I think he stepped back into that role splendidly. And
it's interesting because I've been listening to a podcast and he was talking about how when they were filming the first couple of episodes, he wasn't slated to be an actor on the show. And which really says a lot about the evolution of this series is he went from being just a director early on in the series to suddenly being really not just kind of the place to go hide out and connection point and recentering for Picard, but also really being one of the heroes at the end of the day. And I think he had a pivotal role. And you and I were talking about how we thought the role that Riker ended up having might go to something like Worf. Like we were kind of speculating Worf was going to get that role, which he didn't.
And the Enterprise.
Enterprise. We hoped we'd see the Enterprise, which we didn't. We saw it at the beginning of the season, but not at the end. Maybe next season, though. You never know. But I think I'd have to agree with you. Riker was my favorite cameo. It was fun seeing Troy. It was fun seeing 7 of 9 and Hugh. But next season, there's going to be even more connections between Next Generation, apparently. I know Guinan is going to be in it at some point. How big of a role that is, who knows? We'll see.
Has that been somewhat confirmed? Or
he asked her on The View.
Oh, okay.
Like Sir Patrick Stewart said, would you be on season 2 of Star Trek Picard? And she said yes. So I feel like that's a confirmation. It's like, well, if you ask on national TV, you kind of have to do it, I feel like.
And if you say yes on national TV, that's...
Right, double thing. Yeah. So I guess my next question is, who would you like to see? I know who I would like to see in season 2, but who would you like? I have 2 that I'd like to see.
I think I might have the same 2. I think I know at least one of them. We've been talking about it throughout the season. That
okay, so what are they?
My first reaction is actually Geordi.
Okay.
He's in the book. Little other plug for the book.
Yeah.
He's a character in the book, which is great. I would like to see like more of his story from where the book kind of leaves off. So
Yeah, where
I'd
does
like to
he
see him in
go?
season 2.
Well, and you have to think he was a huge part of that end with Riker, with all of those ships.
Right. That's yeah.
I mean,
You
that
gotta
was
wonder
his
if
life
he.
work. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's what he was doing.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
else
You
would
have
you
to
like to
wonder if he
see?
even did. I would have to say Crusher. I think I actually I'm actually not going to go in the direction that I thought I was going to go to
Oh,
first. I think I talked about this early on in the season with you. I actually want to see Wesley. I
okay.
actually think that there's something there about um, his relationship with the captain. Like he appears in Nemesis, but we don't know what in the world he's been up to.
He's been with
As
the
far as like
Traveler the last we know, though, really, right?
he was, but then supposedly because he was, if you see in Nemesis, he's back in a Starfleet
That
dress
is
uniform.
true. You're right.
So at some point he went back to Starfleet. So he was doing something. There's the loosely canon books that he served with Riker and Troy.
Which
But I
would make
mean,
sense.
yeah, because we don't know if the books are canon or not completely. We can't say. So
I was hearing one of the podcasts, and I think it was Alex Kurtzman, who basically said books are canon until TV or movies say otherwise, and that movies and
okay.
TV take precedence over books. So if you come down to be like between the two, um, if it's on the screen, it overtakes what's on the page. If that makes any sense, but until it's told otherwise, the books are canon.
Okay.
Which is kind of weird, but it's also kind of cool.
I think it's almost better that way.
Yeah, I mean it's reasonable.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean I feel like that's where it kind of is ambiguous, and you could go anywhere. But I'm with you. Like we know he has almost like some kind of powers because of being with the Traveler and having whatever abilities that he learned from him.
Yeah.
So like, is there something that he could do to I thought maybe he would come into this this season.
You
like
thought Wesley would be?
I thought maybe they could.
The only reason I didn't think he was going to be in it is because he's doing the Ready Room.
I know. He can interview himself. It's fine.
Well, he could, but I was kind of like, I feel like the Ready Room was kind of like, who do we have around that's in Star Trek and it's personable that's not in this show?
Yeah. Right.
So if he's not hosting the Ready Room the next season, that's probably good. I totally would have. I was hoping for Crusher. I would have liked to seen Geordi next season too. I think that'd be cool. Or Worf.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's Worf and Geordi on the Enterprise, that would just be like having our cake and eating it
too. Yeah, I mean, you got to wonder if he went back to the Enterprise after serving with some of the relocation stuff.
He might as well. I mean, unless he got promoted or something and went, like, we just don't know. Like, there's... I keep
trying to remember. I think there's a Voyager episode that's supposed to take place in the future that I think he's a captain. I might be wrong on his rank.
Oh.
But I think he moved up a rank. It's not. I think it was like a future that like.
The problem with Star Trek is the future is never written in stone.
Right. Exactly, and I think it's something that like they did have to redo the past with Voyager. Like something was, I think there's like tons of episodes of Voyager that were like that, as we know.
Yeah, they like. Well, there's tons of Star Trek episodes in general where they're like, we need something different to do today. Let's play with time travel.
We haven't done that for like 5 episodes. Let's do that again.
Well, and they're getting back into it supposedly with they have with Discovery. They've already been like
went to the future.
Yeah, like
they're in the future now. Yeah,
I feel like every Star Trek series deals with time travel at some point.
Mm-hmm. And the mirror. Well, maybe not the mirror universe. Like having something evil, and then I guess Next Generation never had the mirror universe.
Neither did Voyager, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was just.
I feel like DS9 did, and yeah. Huh. Weird.
Yeah, but.
Okay, well, if you had to, as we're at that 30-minute mark already, or actually we're past it, but what was your favorite part of season 1 of Picard, and what would you say your least favorite part of season 1 of Picard was, as we wrap this up?
I think my least favorite was, and it looks like they're still going with it. I think it's the relationship between the new captain. I'm forgetting his name already.
Oh yeah.
His first name's Chris, I think. But anyway, new captain guy and Girardi, the doctor. I feel like that was out of nowhere in some ways, and like, and then
it was almost they're still going convenient.
With it. Oh yeah,
it was just kind of like, oh, everybody's dead, so like,
yeah.
I mean, I feel like it wasn't nearly as natural as something like Riker and Troy, or there's been some really good connection, Worf and Dax, like there's been some really good connections through the years, and and I would put this in more of the realm of like Chakotay and Seven of Nine, and where it just always felt a little bit weird.
But even that was a little more natural, a little bit more than this.
Well, part of it is because they had more time to develop it, but this one just kind of seemed a very like,
here it is.
Oh, I just killed my boyfriend, so now
so I need another one.
Yeah.
You look good. There's only like 2 other guys, and one of them's 90 years old. So.
Right. Yeah. It just didn't fit quite as well as some of the ones that I think that was probably. And then what was your favorite part?
That one's harder. There's quite a bit. Maybe I'll let you say your stuff. Come back to me.
Cop out. Okay, so my least favorite is I feel like they took a more adult approach in general with this, and 98% of that I was 100% fine with. I think there was some gratuitous language that just didn't need to be in there, and if they'd have gotten rid of those words, I feel like this would be something that all ages could really enjoy, whereas the profanity a few times and the way it was used suddenly took it from oh yeah, this is probably okay for younger like kids to watch, to suddenly like, hey daddy, what's that mean? And and I feel like they just barely a few times went past that mark in a way that Star Trek really hasn't done before. I guess they did in Discovery, but before that, really they haven't passed that mark before. And they've used profanity before, and I think it's been fine, and it's been funny at times, and it's had a purpose. But it seemed here it was more of just like oh, we're truckers, and we're rough people, so we swear. And so it kind of didn't have the same resonance or punch that I think it can have when it's used wisely. And there were times it was used wisely, but especially in like the last episode in particular, I was like, that maybe wasn't necessary. Like, I get it, and it's part of the story, but you could have done it in another way that probably would have kept this a little bit more like the entire family could watch it. Like, at that point, I was like, I don't want to watch this with my parents. And I don't know about if you felt that way. I think my favorite part of it really was the last 15 minutes of the last episode, mainly because the entire season built up to that. And I wouldn't even say the full last 15 minutes. I would just say that battle sequence where everybody was coming together. And I really feel like that's what Star Trek has always been about, is all of these different people from different areas and different lifestyles and beliefs all coming together for the greater good. And and that happened, and in that moment we get to see Captain Riker, and we get to see Picard at his best, and there was just a lot of really powerful things happening in probably like a 5-minute span. And to me, that was my favorite moment in the entire series or season, and it really was only impactful because of everything that led up to it.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about the battle too, but I feel like it was so fresh I didn't want to go to it. But I would say, I mean, connected though, I figured out my favorite. I think was
Okay.
the overall the episode with Riker and Troy.
Yeah.
Seeing their family, and I think um, it was a good reintroduction and a good continuation of that family story. But I feel like too, we got to see Picard and Riker's relationship
Yeah.
in like really what that became by the end of Riker's time on the Enterprise, and that really those two have a bond that goes beyond serving on the same starship. In
Yeah.
that, well, and then alluding to, I think in this season finale episode, I mean, they're both saying like, "Hey, we got each other's back. We always do." I feel like, but I feel like that the one episode with the family really showed.
Well, and that's the one that really added depth to Soji too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it just added so much in that episode. I think the thing that it brought up for me too is clearly there's an unwritten bond between the two of them that probably is the deepest relationship in all of that crew. Even though the relationship between Picard and Data is always kind of highlighted a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I feel like maybe that happens because of who Data is and trying to figure things out in the journey they're taking together, trying to help Data be more human. And really, Picard trying to help Data be more human is also finding the humanity in himself.
Well, I feel like it even like shows each of the relationships in Next Generation were different, but they had that close bond because I feel like Picard and Data were a little more father son.
Yeah.
Riker and Picard are more brothers.
Yeah.
I think even I don't know exactly how to pinpoint Picard and Worf's relationship, but I mean that was different.
That's uncle and well, uncle and nephew.
Yeah.
Since we're going family, you know.
the both crazy ones who put themselves through pain rituals and
yeah, and I do like though in the Next Generation they did give Picard time with pretty much each of his main officers to really develop each relationship in that character, and that was a good choice. And they kind of did the same thing with this season as well, where they really gave Picard basically 1 or 2 episodes with each character as they were growing and building that team, where they developed with each other, and that was a good choice. All right, we've been on this for about 40 minutes now, so I think we can both say season 1 of Star Trek Picard is a home run. If you want, you can go on CBS All Access right now, and you can get a month for free through the most, I don't remember if it's the 26th, 23rd, something like that of April. CBS All Access you can get for free, and there's a code you can get on dapsmagic.com so that you can get that for free. I think it's give or gift or something like that. But for last question as we close this out is in terms of a season of Star Trek, any season of Star Trek, is it a fair judgment to say this might have been the best season of Star Trek ever?
I mean, it's certainly up there.
Like a standalone season.
Yeah. No, it's certainly up there for me. I think there's still a season of Next Generation that is possibly my favorite.
Which one?
But season 4.
Okay.
Easily say.
Yeah, I could. I mean, that was. I liked 4, and I really liked 7 just for how. I was going to say
7 is my second. Yeah. Yeah. This might be my third. I think Picard season 1 might be my third.
I think this is the first one that really is an entire story in a season, which is why I feel like it might be for me the most solid standalone season of a Star Trek show, and part of that is going to create a bar that they're going to have to hit next year or whenever the next season is. And
I think they could easily do it. I think I like that it just ended.
Yeah. And I hope they don't do anything to damage that next year and over explain things from this season, and they just move forward instead.
Yeah.
All right. We hope you've enjoyed our review slash reaction video to Star Trek Picard Season 1. I think we were both blown away by tonight's episode. Is that a safe assessment?
Oh, yeah.
And one of the best Star Trek episodes I've seen, especially that it's an ending and not a cliffhanger. But if you'd like more of these videos, let us know in the comment. We don't usually do Star Trek, but we're more than happy to if you'd like that. Also, make sure to subscribe to this channel so that you can see Murray do some retro video game racing. I'm sure you've got more coming up. And you can also catch us on Geeks Corner on Tuesday nights at 9:30. And then you can catch me on the Disney Reporter every Saturday afternoon. And then we've got a bunch of Disney videos from the past that we still have to upload. And so you don't want to miss any of that. It's all going to be good. So we hope you have a fantastic night or day or whatever it is when you're watching this. And we look forward to seeing you next time.